what are those skills that you would recommend a full stack developer to acquire to become an AI engineer?
One of the effects that predicts is the way how they
Why human data is required to train large language models?
plays in the fact that behind this artificial intelligence, there are efforts of literally hundreds of thousands of experts.
What makes Toloka different than other big players in the market?
I would say that it stands on three key pillars. These would be:
How do you source these human experts?
we have created a specific platform for our experts. We call it Minddrift. And this is a platform where,
You had a chance to encounter any of the use cases in the legal domain?
first of all, AI by definition deals very well with the majority of cases and deals poorly with edge cases.
Well, thank you so much, Olga, for taking our time for this podcast, AI for Everyone. I really, really appreciate it.
Hello, thank you for inviting me.
Awesome. Well, Olga, as I mentioned you earlier, from this podcast, my objective is to get a deeper understanding of what are large language models, what is reinforcement learning, why human experts' inputs are required to retrain or fine tune LLMs. Some of the key terms in this particular domain, like reinforcement learning, data annotation, data labeling, and then how Toloka has been growing up in this space for the last few years. So we'll jump into all those details. There's a huge audience that is super curious. Some of the terms that might be very common for you and me, but not very common for many people, but they can make a huge, huge impact in this particular domain. So we'll cover all those things.
Amazing. Looking forward.
Awesome. So, Olga, why don't we start with your journey to build Toloka? I would love to know about your education, your upbringing, your work experiences, and why Toloka.
Basically, I studied mathematical methods and mathematical modeling in economics. And my first job was in the sphere of finance. I've been working in an investment bank as an analyst. But later, I understood that machine learning is a very interesting domain, and finance is not that exciting for me. That's why I turned into the career in big tech. And for a long time, I've been responsible for collecting all the training data for machine learning in big tech companies. And after that, we have founded Toloka and started to grow it.
Awesome. And were you always a machine learning engineer by education as well, or did you learn it along the way?
No, I learned it along the way. I am like a mathematician and economist by education, which is more a theoretical background, I would say. And AI in general is developing as fast right now that I'd say everybody is learning on the way.
And what part of your earlier upbringing made you start Toloka or get into entrepreneurship?
Well, the story of Toloka is that, as I have mentioned, I have been working in a big tech company, being responsible for collecting training data to power all its AI products, starting from search, later with voice assistant, self-driving cars, and etc. And at every moment of time, one of the major bottlenecks in AI development has always been human expert data, which is needed to train and evaluate the models. That's why at every moment of time, we've been solving the problem of scaling the production of high quality human data. And at some moment, we have developed Toloka as an open platform where anyone could register as an expert to participate in some projects, and anyone can register as a requester to launch their projects related to collecting data for training machine learning and collect their data sets. And once we have done that, we have seen that Toloka started to grow very extensively among not only the researchers within our company, but also across all AI researchers across the globe. And that's why at some moment we have decided that we spin off from mother company and started operating as an independent entity. Last year, we have raised an investment round led by Jeff Bezos, and now continue our journey as an independent company.
Awesome.
Toloka as a company is serving the major frontier labs, training the algorithms behind the foundational models, as well as we're working with multiple Fortune 500 companies, enterprise leaders, and also new generation of AI startups who are developing their projects.
Mhm. That is super helpful. So, Olga, let's try to understand why human data is required to train large language models. For me, large language models already seem very, very smart. Whatever I ask, they give a perfect answer, at least according to me. So, why human data?
That is a very good question. And I think the whole irony behind artificial intelligence industry in general lays in the fact that behind this artificial intelligence, there are efforts of literally hundreds of thousands of experts who are bringing their expertise into the process of training those models. In general, I would say that we can compare the development of AI with the development of a human person over the years. When, like, 10 years ago, for example, AI was at the stage of intellectual development similar to a child. And it was learning some basic skills like how to see on the street, this is a pedestrian, this is a car, this is a traffic light, or how to rank, this is a good search answer for the search question, this is a bad answer, and so on. And for even for those relatively simple skills, at every moment of time, you need the ground truth, because how the machine learning works in general is that you provide the large pool of examples to the model. The model learns and formulates certain logic based on the examples it observes. And then, once meeting every new use case, it applies the logic it has learned to every new use case. And the major question in the industry is where to get those ground truth examples. And quite often, the only source where you can get them is actually only ask humans to provide you with these benchmark examples, because they do not exist in any other form in the world. This is how the industry of human data started to develop. And as I have mentioned, initially it was developing like when AI was at the, I would say, intellectual stage of a child. The data annotation that was required was complied of relatively simple tasks, like to train that this is a car, this is a pedestrian, this is a good answer, this is a bad answer, and so on. Over the time, when the AI had been progressing, it kind of entered the stage of a university student or PhD level of student. And already to train AI some fundamental knowledge, it was already not enough to be just any human to bring this new signal to the models. That's why approximately in the years 2021, 22, and when ChatGPT came out, it became like evident that AI needs to be trained already on the expertise of highly skilled, highly educated professionals. And this is when the whole industry started to rely on the expertise of PhD level students, professors of the universities, those people who bear very strong academic knowledge in certain fields, to ensure that once you are receiving the answer of a model, it does not hallucinate. It provides you with the answers that are factually correct and proven by references and by trusted sources of information, and so on. And after that, the development of AI continued. And just like as a human, after having finished the university, gets their first jobs as an intern in some company and start to learn new skills like how to use some working instruments that are being used in this company, how to work in Slack, how to set up a CRM, etc., etc. This is roughly speaking the level of development of AI agents, which is where we are right now. And again, for training those AI agents, just as for training a new intern in a company, you already need, to the less extent, university professors, but to a more extent, you need the insights and help from practicing professionals, people who are working in this industry day to day, like accountants, financial specialists, medical doctors, lawyers, etc., etc. And these are the types of the professions that are right now providing very valuable and unique signals and insights that are used to power and train AI agents. And this is the very interesting evolution that we are observing over the last 10 years.
That is wonderful. That is amazing. And that gets me to a question. How much human data are you collecting, or these LLMs need to upscale or like to fine tune? Because there are infinite number of fields, there are infinite number of experts. What are the areas that Toloka focuses on, or what do you think, which are the biggest industries?
On the one hand, there are certain domains of knowledge which are, I would say, universally useful for any foundation models. Like all the models are trained best at by the knowledge from formal logic sciences. So mathematics, STEM, coding are the domains which are universally demanded because it has been already seen by many multiple examples that once being trained on those formal logic use cases, actually foundational models get better skills in all the other skills and all the other domains as well, because this is the type of the expertise that trains models to do better reasoning and so on. At the same time, you are absolutely right. The amount of domains of application of AI in general is basically infinite. So we do see constant demand in the fields related to finance, coding, law, medicine, and some others, as well as which is a new and very interesting dimension, is everything related to physical AI and robotics,
Hmm.
where thinking in these similar parallels to human development, physical AI and robotics is yet on some lower stages of development. We are still teaching robots to do more basic operations, to orient in the space, to execute some relatively simple actions, actions that are simple for the humans, but so far not so trivial for the robots. And this is also another dimension where human expertise is needed. But here we're talking not about intellectual expertise, but basically ability to manipulate with the objects.
Okay. And so, if we are dealing with that large number of human data, how do you source these human experts? Is there any platform of Toloka where people go and they can register? Like, and how did you start right at the like at the very beginning when you started Toloka, and when it was like a part of the bigger organization, and how is it happening now?
So indeed, we started in a form of a pure crowdsourcing platform where literally any person who is interested can register, look at the tasks which are interesting for them, and participate. Over the time, when the requirements towards human expertise started to become higher and higher, we have created a specific platform for our experts. We call it Minddrift.
Okay.
And this is a platform where we invite all the experts from across the globe representing different areas of domain expertise. We carefully select those experts. They undergo certain processes of vetting, interviews, verification of their skills level. But once the person passes through those qualification systems, they get access to very interesting, very complex, and very inspiring projects related to collecting the data sets that are used for training foundational models.
Olga, I started a company back in 2020 when I left my job for the first time from Deloitte. And my company was basically to create study material for people who want to get into data science and the machine learning domain. And I started creating it myself for the first because I worked with Deloitte as a data scientist for a few years. And when I started creating, I was like, okay, I cannot create that much amount of training material in say 6 months of time period. So I hired a few data scientists and machine learning engineers from Silicon Valley and mostly from the New York area. And I asked them that, hey, create content on this topic, that topic, and that topic. They started creating that content, and all of them came from like pretty good places, like very good renowned companies, very good background. But what I learned that when I asked them to create this training material, the quality of training material wasn't that great. Some people were great, they provide like amazing quality material, but for a lot of other people it was just a way to make some side income. So that passion was missing, that quality of content that I was creating for my viewers, that was missing. And it became a huge nightmare for me to manage like ten people, review the quality of their work, and it was taking way lot more time that if I would have dedicated myself to create that content, I mean, it would be probably half of that time. How do you manage that, right? Suppose you have onboarded like 5 experts, right, in the legal domain. Now you're not a legal expert, right? How do you vet whether the content or the data created by them is actually good?
That is, I think, the most crucial question in our industry and in our
Yep.
job in general, because the nature of human data industry is lays in the fact that we are dealing with large amounts of data. We are dealing with large data sets, which by nature cannot be created by one person. That's why the problem that we are solving is actually just as you described. You have certain vision, and then you need to ensure that you pass this vision to, for example, 100 of other people. You align with them on this vision, and they continue to execute according to this vision in a consistent way, creating more and more data items over time. And for me personally, that has always been a very interesting and challenging task. I personally see the huge, like the mathematical beauty in this challenge of extracting useful signal out of fuzzy efforts of humans, because humans are always doing something not exactly in the way you ask them to do. That is just the immanent feature of us as biological species. But at the same time, if you learn how to extract the useful signal out of these efforts and replicate it at scale, that makes the whole data collection operations scalable and like technologically efficient. So how do we approach this challenge in Toloka? Like across the time, we used to use different measures. We started with pure statistical methods of controlling the quality when we could afford ourselves to ask similar question to several people, collect their votes, aggregate them, use different weights depending on the level of trustworthy of certain expert, and so on. While we are dealing now with very complex data items that are needed to train and evaluate AI agents, for example, one data item can be very complex and very long to produce. It can take one person several hours or several dozens of hours to produce even one data item. That's why how we approach it is also using the LLMs. We basically formulate, we call these the quality criteria or the rubrics, while we define what is the good answer, what is our vision of the good answer, how the good answer should look like. Once you formulate it and align it with the customer, you can use LLM to constantly verify every action and every answer that the human expert provides against those quality criteria. And this is what allows us to control the quality of the data at scale and produce high quality data items, providing all the business logic that when the item is not accepted by the automated quality criteria, we either ask some other experts to help generate this data item or send it to complete rework and etc. So just as you say, it is very important first to train experts also in an automated way to ensure that like everybody is aligned on what is expected to execute, and then to control it across the along the way of production.
Now that must be a really, really difficult task, although you define like it very nicely, but I don't expect to be a really easy task to manage.
Yeah, but and that is a deeply technological task. So I do not believe that this can be solved in a purely operational way. Like when we are talking about hundreds of or thousands of people or dozens of thousands of experts executing hundreds of thousands of data items, you cannot solve it only operationally. You cannot
Yep.
have managers managing managers and so on. So
Hmm.
this is the only way out, is to set up some technological process. And basically, the current level of LLMs development allows us to have it done.
Hmm. Now let's talk about an important part, money. How much do you pay experts? Or in other terms, how much side income can people make by providing human data? Or what is the industry standard?
We usually operate by the market rate. So when we are talking, obviously, when we are talking about some very simple tasks, they are like much easier, and the rates would be lower there. But when we are talking about tasks which are really complex and require high level of domain expertise, the rates are like similar to the market rates which the person of this specialization expects to be earning. If we're like right now, the profile of our experts is really impressive. We have people who are have 10 years at McKinsey at the background, then being a CEO at some startup, and then participating in some projects of data collection in Toloka. So the hourly rate can vary from some dozens of dollars per hour to $hundreds per hour, depending on the level of complexity of the tasks.
Hmm. And what happens to the data when you receive it from experts? How does the data pipeline look? What happens next with that data? Or do you fine tune it? What's the next process?
In general, if we take a look back how the data is being used for training machine learning models, we can again compare it with the experience of humans. It's basically how like you read a textbook. At first, you read some theory and read lots of theoretical materials. This is similar to pre-training stage when the models are reading all the texts they could find in the world and collecting some foundational wisdom that they collect on the pre-training stage. Then, as humans, we usually look at some number of examples. Like this is how you should be solving these tasks. This is similar to what is called SFT data or supervised fine tuning data, when we are basically providing the machines with benchmark examples of how they should execute certain tasks. Like on the examples of chatbots, for example, all the chatbots as we know them today became those amazing and intellectual chatbots because the models were trained on those literally dialogues between users and the models. And the models have been training on those dialogues, learning how to actually interact with the user in the form of a dialogue. Then, after the SFT stage, comes the next stage, again similar to the humans. After they have seen certain examples, they go and start uh, testing themselves, solving certain tasks and getting the answers, whether I was right or I was wrong. And this is the reinforcement learning stage where the models are being trained on certain examples and getting the signals out of human experts. Okay, this is the behavior that was correct or was wrong. In some cases, this is in the form of, for example, RLHF, reinforcement learning with human feedback, when the human expert is shown two options of the answer of the models and is supposed to choose which of the answers is better than the other. Receiving those signals, the model learns how to select the better option, the better answer out of existing ones. Right now, we are moving to the stage, since everybody is moving into the agentic era, we are moving to the stage of what is called RLGMs, reinforcement learning gyms, where basically we are creating the environments in which agents are executing certain tasks. And again, we are providing those like environments and step-by-step instruction of how the agent should execute the task. And then this data is being used for training the model. And the last stage of this production is evaluation. Basically, once the model is trained, you want to know how it performs and what are the most frequent failure modes, which are the areas you need to focus later to improve the model further. So these are the stages which basically every model passes through the stages of its development. SFT, reinforcement learning, and evaluation.
Oh, that's amazing. Olga, let's cover a few very basic terms. We should have covered it earlier, but let's cover it now, right? For anyone who's probably interested in this particular domain, especially experts, right? Like lawyers, engineers, doctors who have great domain knowledge, but they may not be aware of all the terms that we are using. So why don't you teach me in very simple terms, what is reinforcement learning? What is fine tuning? What is data annotation and what is data labeling in brief?
That is a good question, but let me try to explain it once again. And I'm sorry for being over simplistic or maybe repeating myself. The core idea of machine learning is that you take a bunch of examples and the model looks at these examples and learns, like tries to understand the logic behind these examples. And then every time the model meets any new use case, it applies the logic that it gained during this educational stage. And the core question is, where do you get those examples from? Sometimes, and actually quite often in the AI industry, the only way how to get those training examples on which the model will be training itself is to ask human experts to provide these examples for the model. So this process of providing human examples to train the model is called data labeling or data annotation. Actually, right now it is more often called human data, because the further we go across the levels of development of AI, the less it is about annotation or labeling, and the more it is about creating and forming complex data points of human insights. But this is what we can call like the stage of data annotation. Then once the model has trained on this amount of examples, we want to understand actually the quality of the model and how well does it execute. This is called the evaluation stage. During the evaluation stage, you again need human experts who would look at the performance of the model with their expert insights and will evaluate whether the answer of the model is correct or not. Probably everybody in your audience has this experience in meeting the hallucinations in the models, when the models are speaking in a very convincing way, but they actually can hallucinate and tell you some very random facts, but in a very convincing manner. So you need human experts to identify whether the fact the model is talking about is correct or not. And this is the stage of evaluation. After we have understood the quality of the model and the major cases where it fails, you want to continuously improve the quality of the model. And this is what is called fine-tuning stage. Basically, then we repeat the whole cycle. We choose the areas where the model fails. We select the new amount of data that is needed to train the model more on these use cases for it to deal with such problematic use cases better. We fine tune the model, we train it again, then we evaluate it again, we see how it progresses, and then the loop continues.
This is super helpful. So, Olga, you talked about hallucination. We recently conducted an experiment where we created about 50 questions specifically about different fractures or how an orthopedic surgeon or a doctor should treat a particular situation. So, we created 50 questions with 4 multiple choice answers, and we gave those questions to 4 junior MBBS doctors, like who are just getting started in the orthopedic domain, and we gave it to 4 very experienced orthopedic surgeons, And we identified that orthopedic surgeons gave 83% of the right answers. Junior doctors give 30% of right answers to those questions, because these are like edge cases. These are not like normal, oh, what if your bone fractures? What would you do? These are like edge cases. 30% of junior doctors gave correct answers to these questions. And then we gave these questions to four frontier LLM models: ChatGPT, Gemini, and then Claude, and then one more. And we identified that they answered 28% questions correct. And mostly they answered, I mean, when they gave wrong answers, they were very similar to the wrong answers of junior resident doctors. And the conclusion that we came up with, that this is very dangerous for a junior doctor who's using LLM to confirm their diagnosis, that hey, this is the situation, what is your recommendation? And then the LLM would suggest something that a junior doctor would believe that this is the right diagnosis, and further bolstering their incorrect diagnosis process. Right. And in some situations, we identified that it continued on that wrong concept. So that's very, very risky situation. Can you talk about one example where LLM gave quite risky or wrong answers before fine tuning, and the results after training it with the human expert data?
Sure. So one of the parts, actually, just as I mentioned before, I think right now AI in general is on the level of development of junior specialists. We are not yet at the level of development of very senior, experienced doctors or whoever. Although the progress is fantastically fast, we are not there yet. That's why I think your experiment quite aligns with the situation overall. But speaking about hallucinations and improving of the quality on the fine tuning and additional data, I can give you an example, not on the level of the large foundational model, but on a very specific use case, which we are dealing with quite often, is fine tuning of agents in some enterprise use cases, because this is where you can see the effect quite fast. Basically, what we do, for example, one large e-commerce company, they are very technically advanced. They have multiple agents helping their customers, for example, merchants, to set up some process in their product. And basically, their task was to, so they have agent already up and running. One question is to evaluate what is the quality of this agent, how does it actually execute, and second, to identify where does it fail, and third, to identify how we can improve this process. So this is again the case when you need human annotation to evaluate the behavior of an agent and come up with a ground truth saying, okay, this was correct and this was incorrect, and so on. And what we have identified that is that one of the major failure reasons for the agent is lays on the phase of, we call it solvability. It is basically when the agent is trying to solve the task which it is not yet able to solve. And one of the skills that the agent should have is to timely say, hey, I cannot execute that. I don't know how to do this. I will not give you the answer because I am not sure. And in our experience, so we have identified this solvability as one of the major failure modes. We have collected the additional data set to train this agent to be better at dealing with those cases. Then we like fine-tuned the model, applied it again to similar use cases, and we have seen 30% improvement in the performance of an agent comparing to the level it had before the fine-tuning.
Awesome. And are there any such cases in the legal domain as well that you have come through? Legal tech is in AI is something like I've come across like multiple startups backed by YC and Sequoia Capital. I came across some of the very interesting use cases. Have you had a chance to encounter any of the such use cases in the legal domain?
Well, I would say that first of all, AI by definition deals very well with the majority of cases and deals poorly with edge cases. just
Hmm.
because by definition, these are the edge cases. They rarely appear in the training set. It is hard for AI to know in advance how to deal with the edge cases. I personally am a huge believer of hybrid solutions. I do like honestly, I do not foresee how like AGI will happen and AI will magically learn how to automatically perfectly deal with any edge case in the world. I do believe that for a long time we have ahead of us when the combination of AI plus human will be overperforming either AI only or human only solutions. And I do think that this applies to any domain, including deep specialty domains. We are observing those use cases when AI only is not enough. You need some human to validate and to do the last mile of the efforts in many difficult cases which AI only cannot solve. At the same time, human only without efficiency of AI can do it much longer and be much less efficient as well. That's why we have recently launched our new product, which is called Tandem, which ideology is actually based on this very similar fact. So it is dealing with those edge cases which cannot be solved only by AI, and we are leveraging the same talent force from our Minddrift marketplace of experts, and we are dealing there with like every single task that comes to Minddrift is an edge case. It is something that could have not been solved by AI only. Could not be solved by ChatGPT, and that's why the customers are coming to Tandem looking for some solution which will be relatively fast as AI can be, but also highly accurate as a human can be.
Olga, there's Tandem also has this self-serving data annotation platform. Is it the same as Tandem and Minddrift, or is that something else?
So basically, Minddrift is our community of experts and
Yep.
platform where domain experts vet their skills and choose the tasks they want to participate in. And then, if we look at the whole majority of tasks which require human input and human insight, there will be a huge part of large data sets collection, which frontier labs require. These are huge amounts of data. The budgets that frontier labs are spending on the human data are very big, and we are working with the majority of frontier labs on delivering very complex data sets, mostly in a white glove service mode when we work as data partners with the AI researchers in these labs. We define what are the data sets that they need, and we collect them like in a fully managed service way.
Mhm.
On the other spectrum, on the other edge of the spectrum, these are those very unique, once in a lifetime tasks which cannot be solved by AI only. And these are solved by the Tandem. And usually, the audience of Tandem are professionals who are seeking to solve like more of their individual tasks, like a marketing specialist who is searching for collecting the list of potential target companies or something like that. These go to Tandem, and in between there is like, and I am seeing this right now, that like AI industry is evolving. A lot of researchers and a lot of startups actually need human data, but they cannot afford themselves like the fully white glove service that the big techs and the large frontier labs are getting from companies like Toloka. And that's why we have launched ourselves, like we have opened our product and our technologies in a form of a self-service platform where basically any AI researcher can iterate over the human data. We give access to our pool of experts, so researchers can select experts in 90 plus domains of expertise to participate in their data collection efforts. We give access to our methods of controlling the quality and aligning the vision of researchers with the understanding of those experts in the form of LLM QA. And we also provide our copilot that helps you to create basically the pipelines of data annotation in a timely and efficient manner.
No, that is great. And I'll put links of all the platforms in the description for everyone so that they can visit and definitely give it a shot. But this is super interesting, Olga. Let's jump into career in AI. So I started my career in entrepreneurship, specifically training aspiring data scientists, aspiring full stack developers, mainly here in Silicon Valley, training them for interviews, teaching them basic skills. And then eventually, in the last 5 years, I helped about 800 people land a job in big tech companies and FANG companies. So I'm someone who's very passionate about like helping people get into their dream jobs. Now, the shift that I've seen, so all the people that I've placed in the last 5 years, now they are senior full stack developers, senior data scientists, machine learning engineers, senior data analysts. They want to get into AI now, right? But people have a big confusion. Okay, what should I do to become an AI full stack developer from a full stack developer? What skills do I need to gain to become an AI data scientist or to become an AI engineer, right? And just not be a data scientist. And there is a lot of information out there on internet which is confusing as well. So I think you're the best person to tell that, hey, if I have to hire an AI engineer with a full stack background, I want to see these 3 or 5 skills. So, what are those skills that you would recommend first a full stack developer to acquire to become an AI engineer? And also, we can talk about like a data scientist or machine learning engineer for them to get into the AI domain.
Well, since I have been working with multiple AI teams in different positions, I think one of like what I have observed for many years across my career, one of the effects that predicts like the I would say even the success of the team in general, like from my specific point of view, is the way how they deal with the data and how they understand the specifics of the data that they are training on. Because I think like this is a trivial statement, everybody keeps repeating it, but this is also a very truthful statement. It's like garbage in, garbage out. If we are talking about AI, every AI researcher needs to very deeply understand what he's training their models on. What is the data that he uses for the training? And this understanding needs to be really very deep. You need to be able to be very hands on, going to the very, very essence of the data production to ensure that the data sets that like you are collecting, for example, in collaboration with a company like Toloka, is exactly what you need to have as the outcome. That's why one of my like recommendations is always to learn and to pay great attention to the data to understand that this is one of the most important aspects of training AI, and actually to even try to participate in production of the data, like become the expert at Mindrift. Try by yourself what does it mean to create a data item, feel it on your fingertips. That is a very important part. And secondly, this is where I can provide like statistically educate insights. Again, we are analyzing a lot about successful patterns within our community of experts and Mindrift. We are analyzing what are the profiles of the experts that result in very successful careers within the Mindrift. Who are the people who are like contributing the most and provide the best quality of the data and so on. And the pattern that we see right now is so-called T-shaped profile. Basically, these are the people who have, in a way, non-linear careers. So people who have background in some field, but also some experience in some orthogonal field. Like you can be a data scientist and have experience being a product owner or an entrepreneur or something else. So any combination of two orthogonal experiences is actually very powerful setup, very powerful combination. And I do think that it will be like valid even going forward, going further, not only applicable to the career in AI, but in general in the career in AI driven world.
That's super helpful. Before we wrap up, I definitely want to talk about entrepreneurship part of building a company like Toloka. There are AI space is getting crowded day by day. I'm not very much aware of Netherlands startup domain, but in Silicon Valley, every other street you go, there is like new startup coming in AI and pitching to VCs, right? And specifically about data labeling and annotation, there are companies like Mercor and Micro One, which are very famous here in Silicon Valley. How Toloka stands out and what makes Toloka different than other big players in the market?
Yeah, if we talk about human data domain, which is, I think, already a special industry within the broader I would say that it stands on three key pillars. These would be the talent and the ability to fastly access, vet, and onboard large amounts of highly skilled, talented people across different domains of expertise. Second is how you orchestrate those people and how you orchestrate their efforts to come up with high quality, consistent data at scale. And third part is the expertise of the team. How do you become not just a provider of the data, but actually the partner to the AI researchers and developers on their journey on training new AI models? I would say that what differentiates Toloka is that we are not just a staffing company. While everybody understands the importance of having the very strong community of experts, this is, I would say, becoming a commodity on the market. This is just a necessary minimum that you must have to operate on this market. But what has always been differentiating Toloka is our philosophy of technological orchestration of human efforts at scale. And this is what we are applying now in our self-service platform, when any researcher can iterate over human data by themselves without the necessity to pay millions of dollars checks to ensure that some team will orchestrate the efforts of human experts in a purely operational. We are wrapping it into a technological solution, and this is in the core of Toloka philosophy in general. And lastly, this is, of course, the expertise of a team. We are working with the most sophisticated and advanced teams within the frontier labs, both in Silicon Valley and across the globe. We know that Toloka is now among the most advanced players on the RLGM's market. We hear that from our customers, that the experience that our team has gained across working with multiple customers allows us to develop the most advanced RLGMs, uh, world and long horizon tasks that there are on the industry.
Oh, that's amazing. How do you keep yourself updated in AI? Any specific resources, website, books, people that you follow?
There's a bunch of, I think, mailing lists or something that I'm following, also the social networks. I think the interesting part of our industry is that partly you are updated just by nature, because every day you are talking with multiple teams from multiple frontier labs. So you are aware of literally everything that is going on across the whole market. Even without having to make additional effort on that, you are just being updated by the default.
Absolutely. Well, this is super helpful, Olga, sharing your technical expertise as well as domain expertise with everybody who's interested in providing human expert data or getting into AI domain. So, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I wish you all the best in building Toloka. Amazing platform, amazing opportunity for a lot of people, right? To contribute their expertise. There are tons of people out there, right, with some amazing knowledge, right, but they don't have a way to share that in a deeper way. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. I do hope to see many of your subscribers among both our experts on the MindRisk platform and our requesters using Toloka platform to collect the data sets and develop their own AI solutions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Olga. You have a wonderful day ahead.
Thank you.